He thought humiliating a 14-year-old girl in front of a laughing crowd would be easy. But the moment her mother appeared, the laughter died instantly. It's strange how the most ordinary day can flip upside down in just a few seconds. That's exactly what happened to 14-year-old Imani Richardson one Saturday afternoon at the Southridge Mall in Des Moines, Iowa. At first, it was nothing special, just kids being kids. Imani and her two closest friends, Kadon Brooks and Sierra Walton, were wandering the mall with smoothies in hand, cracking jokes, snapping selfies, and teasing Kadon about how long he took to pick out his brand new Nike Air Max. To anyone else, they looked like typical teenagers enjoying their weekend, but not to Brian Kessler. Kessler, a broad-shouldered man in his mid-40s with cropped gray hair, carried himself in a way that demanded attention. He was off duty from the local police department, working a side shift as mall security that day. From the second floor near the food court, he scanned the crowd like every laugh was suspicious, every movement a threat. When his eyes landed on Imani and her friends, he slowed. Maybe it was their laughter, maybe it was their skin color, or maybe it was both. Whatever the reason, Kessler made a decision in that moment. He was going to stop them. "Hey, you three," he barked, his voice carrying across the mall louder than necessary. "What do you think you're doing here?" Sierra blinked, caught off guard. "We're shopping." Kessler shook his head like he'd already made up his mind. "Don't play smart with me. I've been watching you. You've been hanging around the same spot for 20 minutes. That's loitering." Kadon hugged his shoebox closer to his chest. "I literally just bought these." But Kessler wasn't interested in proof. His hand rested on his belt, not on a gun, but close enough to suggest authority. He squared his shoulders, towering over the teenagers. "Don't get slick. You're loitering. That's not allowed. Do I need to escort you out?" Imani's chest tightened, but she forced her voice to stay calm. "Sir, we're not doing anything wrong. My mom is supposed to meet me here in a few minutes." "Your mom?" Kessler tilted his head with exaggerated concern. "And who is Mommy?" "Maybe she can teach you how to follow the rules." Imani hesitated. She hadn't planned on saying it, but the smug look on his face pushed her over the edge. "My mother is Judge Marcia Richardson. She's a federal judge. Downtown." For a moment, silence. Kadon and Sierra exchanged uneasy glances, waiting for Kessler's reaction. Then he threw his head back and laughed. Asterisk, it wasn't a chuckle, not a polite laugh. It was a full-throated, mocking laugh that turned heads across the food court. "A federal judge," Kessler sneered, shaking his head. "That's rich. Best excuse I've heard all week." He jabbed a finger at Imani. "You could have said your mom's the president. Wouldn't matter. You're loitering." Imani's cheeks burned. She wanted to disappear into the polished tiles beneath her feet. Around them, shoppers slowed, drawn by the raised voice and the uniform. Some whispered. Others stared. With every second, Kessler's laughter felt like a spotlight burning into her. "This is messed up," Sierra muttered under her breath. Kadon stepped forward, his voice tight. "Oh, she's telling the truth, man. You don't gotta talk to her like that." Kessler puffed out his chest, feeding off the growing audience. "What's the matter? Can't handle a little authority? Maybe you should learn some respect before spinning fairy tales about federal judges." Imani swallowed hard. Her mother would be here soon, but the wait felt endless. She wasn't afraid of being kicked out. She was afraid of being humiliated. In front of strangers, reduced to just another kid who couldn't possibly belong to a family with influence. Kessler leaned in close, lowering his voice so only the three of them could hear. "You're not special," he hissed. "Don't forget that." Imani clenched her fists at her sides, fighting back tears. Her mother's words echoed faintly in her mind. "Hold your head high. No one writes your story But under? The weight of Kessler's mockery. Those words felt far away. What neither she nor Kessler knew was that Judge Marcia Richardson was already crossing the parking lot toward the mall entrance. And when she stepped inside, this entire scene would flip in an instant. But right now, the tension only thickened. Seconds dragged on. Kay forced herself to stand tall, though inside she was boiling. Her friends shifted nervously as more onlookers gathered. 10, maybe 15 people now, pretending to browse but staying close enough to watch. Kessler thrived on it. He crossed his arms, scanning the teens like they were criminals caught in the act. His voice carried loud enough for half the mall to hear. "You three think you're clever, huh? Hanging around, blocking the walkway, causing trouble." Imani's stomach nodded. "We're not causing trouble. My mom told me to meet her by the shoe store." Kessler arched a brow. "That's so. Funny, I didn't see her. What I did see was 3 kids laughing, making noise, getting in the way. That's enough to get you escorted out." Caden's hands trembled as he lifted his receipt. "Man, I just spent money here. You can ask the cashier. Enough." Kessler cut him off with a dismissive wave. "Asterisk doesn't matter. Loitering is loitering," Kessler said flatly. "Don't think buying one thing gives you a free pass to hang around all day." It wasn't just the words, it was the smirk behind them. A smirk that told Imani he had already decided who they were before the conversation even began. "He's treating us like criminals," Sierra whispered. Kessler stepped closer, closing the gap between himself and the group. His voice hardened. "Look, I'll make this simple. Either you leave the premises, or I call for backup. And trust me, you don't want that kind of attention." Imani blinked in disbelief. "Backup? For what? We didn't do anything wrong." Kessler's lips curled into a grin. "That's what they all say around them," the crowd murmured. A middle-aged woman in a denim jacket whispered to her husband, "They're just kids." Another man shook his head, muttering something about respecting authority. Opinions were splitting, and the division only seemed to fuel Kessler further. Imani's hands trembled, but she forced the words out carefully. "My mother is coming. She's a federal judge. You're going to regret talking to us this way." And, once again, Kessler exploded with laughter. "A federal judge?" His booming voice carried so far that even shoppers down by the food court turned their heads. "That's your story. What's next? Gonna tell me the president's your uncle?" He slapped his knee, feeding on the attention of the crowd. "Man, it's not even listening," Kadan muttered under his breath. Imani's face burned. A tear threatened, but she blinked it away. Her mother had drilled it into her. Never let someone like this see you cry. "I'm not lying," she said louder, her voice steady now. Kessler leaned down, whose closest words were meant only for them. His tone dropped, sharp and cruel. "Listen, sweetheart. Spin whatever fairy tale you want. But you're still just a kid I caught loitering. And nobody in this mall cares who you think you are." The words pierced deep. For a moment, Imani felt small, invisible. But Sierra's anger broke the silence. Her voice trembled as she shouted, "You can't talk to her like that. She's not lying." Kessler's head snapped toward Sierra, his eyes narrowing. "Watch your mouth, young lady. You want to spend the rest of your afternoon in the security office. I can make that happen." Sierra froze, her courage fading under his glare. By now, the crowd had thickened. Phones appeared in people's hands, some discreetly recording, others openly filming. A little boy tugged on his mother's sleeve and asked, "Why is he yelling at them?" She hushed him quickly and pulled him away. Imani's heart pounded. She could feel it. Her mother had to be close. That familiar pull, like she always knew the moment Judge Marcia Richardson entered a room. But right now, was still Kessler, towering over them, every word spilling from his mouth like gasoline on a fire. "You kids don't understand how the world works." Kessler shook his head in mock disappointment, his voice dripping with false authority. "You kids think rules don't apply to you. You think you can talk back to authority and get away with it, but not today." Imani's hands tightened around her phone. Part of her wanted to call her mother right then, but she knew Judge Richardson hated distractions while driving. Instead, she prayed silently. "Please, Mom, hurry. Please get here now." Cadden tried again, his voice steadier this time. "We're not lying. Her mom really is Judge Richardson. Everyone in this city knows her." Kessler chuckled, shaking his head. "Kid, I've been in this city longer than you've been alive. If a federal judge was strolling into this mall, I'd know. Don't waste my time." The arrogance in his tone was suffocating. But just as the words left his mouth, a sound echoed from the mall entrance, the sharp, deliberate click of heels striking polished tile. The sound grew louder, measured, commanding. Heads began to turn, shoppers whispered. Eyes shifted toward the escalators, and there she was, Judge Marcia Richardson, tall, poised, still in her black blazer from court. Her eyes swept the scene in seconds. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The air itself seemed to bend around her presence. Kessler hadn't noticed yet. He was too busy puffing himself up, lecturing teenagers like the crowd wasn't there. Like his voice was the only one that mattered. But Imani saw her mother's silhouette moving closer, her pace quickening. Relief surged through her chest, mixing with adrenaline. Because now the story was about to change. Still, Kessler kept pressing. He leaned down toward Imani, a smug grin plastered across his face. "You know what the problem is with kids like you? You think if you throw out some big title, some fancy story, people will back off. But that's not how the real world works." Imani clenched her jaw. "I'm not making it up." Kessler laughed again, loud and theatrical, soaking in the attention. He turned toward the onlookers, gesturing at Imani like she was the punchline of a joke. "A federal judge. That's her mom. Can you believe this?" A few bystanders smirked. Others looked uncomfortable. But the sting wasn't just in his words. It was in the laughter he fished for, the humiliation he wanted her to feel. Sierra stepped closer, her voice sharp. "Why is that so hard to believe? She's telling you the truth." Kessler arched a brow, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, of course, because every other kid in this mall has a parent on the federal bench. What's next? Her dad's the attorney general." He rolled his eyes dramatically. A few people chuckled. Imani's cheeks burned hot. She wanted to scream, to shout, to demand they believe her. But instead, she stood straighter, forcing strength into her trembling voice. "I don't need to prove anything to you. She's coming, and when she does, you'll see." That confidence only made Kessler grin wider. "Oh, I can't wait. I'd love to meet this so-called judge mom of yours. Maybe she can teach you how to respect authority instead of making up fairy tales." Caden's hands shook, but his voice came out. "Steady, keep laughing. You're gonna look real stupid in about 5 minutes." Kessler's smirk faded into a cold glare. "Watch your tone, kid. You don't want to test me." The tension thickened. Phones were out everywhere now, recording. A young woman whispered to her friend, "He's going too far." Another muttered, "He's enjoying this." Imani's heart raced, her mother's words echoing in her head. "The higher they laugh at you, the harder they fall when truth walks in." She swallowed the lump in her throat and forced herself to meet his eyes. "You think it's funny now?" she said firmly. "But you'll see." Kessler leaned in close, his cologne sharp, his voice low and cruel. "Let me give you some advice, sweetheart." People like me, we don't care about your stories. We care about the rules. And right now, the rule is, you're loitering. The word stung. Not because of what it meant, but because of the way he said it. Like she was less than him. Like nothing she said mattered. This is harassment. Sierra muttered through clenched teeth. Kessler straightened up, his eyes hard, and in that exact moment, Judge Richardson stepped into the crowd. Kessler smirked again, his voice sharp. Harassment? You don't know the meaning of the word. I'm giving you a chance to walk out quietly. That's more than you deserve. The crowd buzzed louder. Someone shouted from the back. They're kids. Leave them alone. Just watched, faces unreadable. Imani's hands trembled, but she held her ground. My mom is Judge Richardson. You'll regret this. Then she saw it. From the corner of her eye, her mother's familiar stride cut through the crowd, purposeful, commanding. Judge Marcia Richardson wasn't the tallest woman in the room, but her presence filled it instantly. Black blazer, crisp posture. A strong, unwavering expression sharp enough to silence anyone nearby. Imani's chest flooded with relief. She whispered almost to herself, "She's here." Kessler didn't notice at first. He laughed, shaking his head. "Oh, I bet she is. Any second now, right?" "Well," came the calm, firm, unmistakable voice, cutting through the noise. "I'm standing right here." Waiting? The crowd parted instinctively, making room. Kessler's smirk faltered as he locked eyes with the approaching figure. He froze for a heartbeat too long, and in that pause, the entire balance of power shifted. Imani's heart soared. This was it. The moment she'd been waiting for, the moment the laughter would stop. Judge Marcia Richardson didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words, strong and clear, sliced through them all. "Is there a problem here?" Her gaze swept Kessler, then rested on Imani. Imani exhaled so hard it almost became a sob. Her mother was here. Finally, Sierra whispered. "Thank God," Kadan muttered under his breath. "About time." Kessler, caught off guard for the first time since the confrontation began, glanced at Marcia, then back at the kids, trying to piece together the situation. His voice, still dripping with authority, came out less confident than before. "Ma'am, these kids have been loitering, disrupting the shopping center. I was handling it." Marcia stopped a few feet away, her eyes sharp. She didn't raise. Her voice, she didn't need to. Handling it by mocking teenagers in public, by threatening backup over a shoebox and smoothies. The crowd stirred. Some murmured agreement. Others leaned in closer. A woman in a red cardigan whispered to her friend, "She sounds serious." Imani straightened, drawing strength from her mother's presence. "Mom, I told him you were coming. He laughed at me." Marcia's gaze didn't leave Kessler. "He told you I was her mother." Kessler cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. "Ma'am, kids say a lot of things when they're in trouble. I didn't take it seriously." Clearly, Marcia said flatly. The onlookers could feel the shift. Phones that had been discreetly raised were now lifted boldly, some stepping closer for a better angle. The atmosphere in the mall had changed completely. Authority had arrived. And it wasn't on Kessler's side anymore. It wasn't every day you saw a federal judge go head-to-head with mall security. One man whispered to his teenage daughter, "Record this. People need to see it." Kessler, realizing all eyes were on him, tried to reassert control. He planted his hands on his belt and puffed out his chest. "With all due respect, ma'am, I was just doing my job. These kids were standing around, causing a scene." Marcia's eyebrows rose slightly. "A scene? The only scene I see is you. Mocking my child for telling the truth. Officer, tell me what exactly about their behavior justified public humiliation." Alma. The crowd murmured again, louder this time. Exactly, someone called out. Another shopper, a man in a baseball cap, added. They were just standing there. Kessler's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected pushback from bystanders. He gestured toward the teens. They were loitering. That's against mall policy. I had every right to question them. Marcia's tone remained calm but sharp. Questioning is one thing. Belittling a 14-year-old girl in front of strangers is another. Did you really laugh at her when she told you who her mother was? The silence was telling. Everyone waited. Kessler shifted uncomfortably, eyes flicking to the phones recording him. Finally, he muttered. She made a claim that sounded outrageous. I reacted, outrageously. Marcia turned briefly to the crowd, her voice carrying clearly. My daughter told the truth, and instead of treating her with dignity, you turned her honesty into a spectacle. That's not security. That's abuse of authority. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the bystanders. Someone clapped softly. Another voice said, "She's right." Imani's heart pounded, but now with pride instead of humiliation. She watched. Her mother dismantled every ounce of arrogance Kessler had wielded against her. Kessler's voice grew defensive. Look, I didn't know who she was. I was just doing my job. Marcia took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. Perhaps you should learn how to do your job without degrading children. Authority does not give you the right to belittle. The crowd was fully engaged now. Shoppers who had been passing by stopped to watch. Some nodded in agreement. Others whispered furiously into their phones as they streamed live. Sierra whispered to Imani, "Everyone's on your side now." Kessler tried to salvage control, voice sharp. "Judge Richardson, you're making a scene too. You should understand procedures better than anyone." Marcia didn't flinch. "And you should understand accountability. I will not let anyone speak to my daughter this way." Her words sank in. A hush fell over the crowd, broken only by the clicking of heels. Mall management, alerted by the commotion, arrived. The manager, a short man with thinning hair and a nervous smile, rushed over. "What's going on here?" His eyes darted between Kessler, Marcia, and the crowd. Marcia spoke before Kessler could answer. "What's going on? Your security officer publicly mocked my daughter, threatened her friends, and laughed when she told the truth about who her mother is. That's what's going on." The manager's face drained of color. "Judge Richardson, I had no idea." The crowd erupted in whispers. Kessler's smirk was gone. His authority crumbled with every word Marcia spoke. Imani looked at her. Mother, feeling seen, defended, and most importantly, believed. But the confrontation wasn't over. Kessler wasn't ready to surrender his pride. Judge Richardson didn't move quickly, but every step she took carried weight. She didn't need to raise her voice or wave her arms. Her presence alone demanded attention. The crowd instinctively cleared a path. Imani felt a rush of relief, like air finally filling her lungs after being underwater too long. Marcia's eyes locked on Kessler. She didn't look at him with fear or anger, but with something colder. Something that made him adjust his stance without realizing it. "Officer Kessler," she said, her tone steady. Kessler stiffened. Yes, ma'am, that's right," she continued. "You've been harassing my daughter and her friends, mocking her in public, dismissing her when she told the truth, and threatening them with unnecessary escalation. Do you deny this?" Kessler opened his mouth, then shut it again. The eyes of the crowd burned into him. He cleared his throat. "Ma'am, with respect. They were loitering. I had cause to address them." Marcia took a half-step closer, her heels clicking against the tile. "Addressing them requires ridicule. You laughed at my daughter when she identified herself. didn't you?" The silence was suffocating. Everyone waited. Kessler swallowed, his bravado weakening. "I may have reacted inappropriately," he admitted. The crowd murmured. Phones recorded every second. Someone at the back muttered, "That's putting it lightly." Imani's shoulders straightened. She no longer felt small. Her mother was here, and everyone watching could see the truth. Marcia's voice sharpened. "In your position, the expectation is to de-escalate, not antagonize. You are entrusted with authority. But authority carries responsibility. It does not give you permission to humiliate a child." Kessler bristled, pride fighting back. "With all due respect, Judge Richardson, I didn't know she was your daughter. I treat everyone the same." Marcia's eyes narrowed. "If this is how you treat everyone, then you've just admitted a serious problem. This isn't about her being my daughter. It's about you abusing your role as an officer of the law, even off-duty. Laughing at a 14-year-old threatening to drag them into a security office. That is intimidation, not equal treatment." The crowd broke into louder whispers, some nodding, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Sierra leaned toward Imani and whispered, "Your mom's killing him right now." Cadden muttered under his breath, "He doesn't stand a chance." Kessler's jaw tightened. He could feel control slipping through his fingers, but stubbornness clung to him. "I was simply doing my job," he insisted. Marcia's tone turned icy. "Your job does not include humiliation. Your job does not include mocking children. Your job does not include creating a spectacle out of your arrogance. If this is how you interpret doing your job, then I fear for the citizens who encounter you in uniform." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Some clapped quietly before realizing how serious the exchange had become. The mall manager wrung his hands nervously beside them. "Judge Richardson, please, let's keep this civil." Marcia cut him off, her voice firm but controlled. "Civility was lost the moment your officer mocked my child in public." She turned back to Kessler. "Are you going to apologize? Or do I need to file a formal complaint with your department?" Kessler's face flushed red. He glanced at the cameras, at the strangers recording him, then at Marcia's piercing gaze. Every option felt like defeat. Imani held her breath. Sierra squeezed her hand. Kadan leaned closer, whispering, "He has to back down now." Tiesler wasn't ready to surrender his pride. He forced a smirk, weaker now, cracked at the edges, and offered an apology. "Sure, if that's what it takes," he said, eyes on Imani. "Sorry, kid." Flat, hollow, insincere. The crowd sensed it immediately. A murmur of disapproval ran through them. Marcia didn't let it slide. "That's not an apology. That's avoidance." She took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "Look at her, say her name, mean it." Kessler shifted uncomfortably. His lips pressed into a thin line, then finally parted. "Imani Richardson, I apologize. I shouldn't have laughed at you." The words hung heavy in the air. Imani's throat tightened. It wasn't enough. It could never undo what had been done. But hearing him say it in front of everyone mattered. Marcia gave a single sharp nod. "Better, but the consequences of your behavior don't vanish with words." The crowd buzzed again. Phones lowered and raised as people exchanged glances. Some outraged on Imani's behalf, others stunned by the judge's authority. Just as the tension seemed to crest, Marcia's phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't take her eyes off Kessler as she answered. Stepping briefly aside, that pause gave Kessler a sliver of space to regroup. He wasn't ready to let this end without clawing back some control. His pride was a stubborn fire, and instead of letting it die, he chose to fan the flames. His apology had been dragged out of him like a child forced to share a toy. Everyone knew it. His voice lacked sincerity, and the lingering tension made it clear. Kessler's arrogance wasn't fully extinguished yet. Kessler's shoulders radiated resentment, and the crowd's murmurs made it clear no one was buying his act. Even after the hollow words left his mouth, he straightened again, trying to salvage some measure of authority as Marcia tucked her phone away. He shifted his weight, puffed up his chest, and said, "Look, Judge Richardson, with all due respect, you're blowing this way out of proportion. I was addressing a security issue. That's all this was." Marcia turned back, her expression sharp as glass. "A security issue?" she asked, her voice slicing through the air. "You publicly laughed at a minor and threatened her friends for standing near a shoe store. If that's your idea of a security threat, then perhaps your judgment is the real problem here." The crowd reacted audibly. Some chuckled at her precision. Others muttered agreement. A college-aged bystander whispered into his phone, "She's tearing him apart." This is insane. Imani's chest swelled with pride. This was her mother, the woman she admired most, the one who never let anyone diminish her or those she loved. But the tension in the air was almost terrifying, the intensity climbing with every word. Kessler's lips twisted, irritation bubbling just beneath the surface. "With all due respect, Judge, you don't understand what it's like working security. In a place like this, you don't see the kind of people who come in here day after day causing problems. I can't afford to take chances." Marcia's eyebrows rose. "So your defense is prejudice. Because you've seen others cause problems, you assume any group of teenagers standing in public must be up to no good. That's not policing, that's profiling." Her words landed heavy. Several in the crowd nodded, some even clapped softly. Before remembering the gravity of the moment, Kessler shifted, clearly uncomfortable, but too stubborn to back down. "I make quick judgments to keep people safe. That's my job." Marcia stepped closer, her tone unflinching. "Your job is to protect and serve, not embarrass, not demean, not assume guilt without evidence. The safety of this community depends on fairness, not arrogance. Do you believe you demonstrated fairness here today?" Kessler's mouth opened, but no words came. His eyes darted to the crowd, to the cameras recording, to the mall manager standing helplessly at the side. For once, his silence spoke louder than his arrogance. Imani felt Sierra grip her hand tighter. Whispering, she said, "He can't even answer." Cadden muttered, "He's cornered." The mall manager finally stepped in, his voice shaky. "Officer Kessler, perhaps it's best you step away for now." Kessler snapped back, his tone rising sharper, like a wounded animal trying to assert dominance. "I don't need to step away. I've done nothing wrong. I was enforcing the rules. That's my responsibility." Marcia didn't flinch. She turned slightly, her voice now carrying not just to Kessler, but to everyone watching. "Authority without accountability is dangerous. If this is how you handle 3 teenagers, imagine how you handle situations when there are no cameras present. We should all be asking ourselves, who watches the people we trust with authority?" The crowd erupted in whispers, some loud enough to carry across the floor. "She's right. That's exactly the issue. This is bigger than today." Imani's throat tightened with emotion. Minutes earlier, she had felt so small, reduced to a punchline in front of strangers. Now, her mother's words transformed that humiliation into a public reckoning. Kessler, though, wasn't ready to surrender. His pride was raw, fraying at the edges. He pointed at Imani, voice sharp. "She pulled the judge card the second I confronted her. What was I supposed to think? Kids lie to get out of trouble." Marcia stepped forward, closing the gap between them, her voice slicing through his excuse. "And when kids tell the truth, do you laugh in their faces? Do you mock them until They feel worthless. That isn't enforcement, officer. That's bullying. The word bullying hit the crowd hard. Gasps echoed. Someone near the escalator shouted, "Exactly!" A Teasler faltered, face reddening. His voice stumbled. "That's not what I didn't Marcia didn't let him finish. Asterisk you, humiliated. My daughter because you assumed her story wasn't credible. You dismissed her honesty because it didn't fit your expectation of who she could be. And that assumption tells me more about you than it does about her." The weight of Marcia's words hung in the air. Silence fell. Even the background hum of the mall seemed muted under the intensity of the confrontation. Imani's eyes glistened. For the first time since this nightmare began, she no longer felt like a victim. She felt vindicated. Her mother's words landed, not just on Kessler, but on everyone watching. Kessler stood cornered, trapped by truth and the cameras capturing every second. His authority, once wielded like a weapon, now seemed flimsy under the glaring light of accountability. Asterisk, the mall manager cleared his throat nervously. "Judge Richardson, perhaps we should take this somewhere private." Marcia's gaze shifted to him, calm but firm. "No. This happened publicly, and it will be addressed publicly." The crowd stirred again, emboldened. For once, the authority figure wasn't dictating the narrative. Yet Kessler's pride wasn't extinguished, and his next move would push the tension even higher. Asterisk, the air was thick with the kind of tension you could almost touch. Phones were raised everywhere, recording red lights flashing. If Kessler had ever held the advantage, it had long evaporated. But instead of retreating, he doubled down, his voice rising as if volume could restore the authority slipping through his fingers. "You all think this is a joke, huh?" He barked, sweeping his eyes across the bystanders. "I'm the one in uniform here. I'm the one responsible for keeping order. And you?" He jabbed a finger at Imani. "Thought you could make me look stupid by throwing out your mom's title." Imani didn't flinch. She straightened her shoulders and met his gaze. "I didn't make you look stupid. You did that all by yourself." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone laughed nervously. Sierra squeezed Imani's arm, a mix of pride and shock, whispering, "Girl, you really said that?" Kessler's face flushed red, a vein pulsing at his temple. He opened his mouth to speak, but Marcia stepped forward before he could. Her voice carried the controlled sharpness of a courtroom. "Officer Kessler, my daughter doesn't owe you silence." In the face of humiliation, she owed you respect, and she gave it. You failed to return it. The weight of her words hit him like a physical blow. He tried again, his voice cracking under the pressure. "Respect goes both ways. I didn't disrespect anyone until Marcia cut him off, calm but piercing. Until you laughed in a 14-year-old girl's face. Until you turned truth into ridicule. That is where you lost your standing." The crowd murmured louder. One man near the back said, "She's right. He was mocking her the whole time." Another woman shook her head, muttering, "And he wonders why people don't trust security." Kessler's fists clenched at his sides. For the first time, the arrogance that had fueled him was unraveling. And the entire mall could see it. Asterisk, Kessler turned to the mall manager, his voice desperate now. "Are you going to let her talk to me like this? I work for you." The manager, sweating under the weight of all those recording phones, stammered, I think maybe we should all calm down." Marcia pivoted to him, her tone steady and cutting. "Calm is what was lost when your officer decided my daughter was worth less than his mockery. If this is the culture you allow under your roof, then accountability will extend to you as well." The manager paled, caught between his employee and the federal judge, glaring at him. He opened his mouth, then shut it again, fumbling with his tie nervously. Kessler tried once more, defiance flickering in his voice. "Judge Richardson, you may hold power in a courtroom, but here in this mall, I have authority. And I won't let a teenager war even you strip me of it." The crowd erupted in whispers. Some were shocked, others were outraged. "Did he just say that to her?" muttered one man. "He's done," another replied. Marcia didn't raise her voice, but the intensity in her tone silenced everyone. Authority is not armor. It is not a shield to wield against those weaker than you. Authority exists to serve on right now. Every eye on you sees how poorly you have used it. The words landed like a gavel striking wood. Even the mall seemed to still, as if waiting for Kessler's response. He faltered, mouth opening and closing without sound. Every second of his silence was captured on countless phones. Imani felt her chest swell with something she hadn't expected: strength. She wasn't just surviving humiliation anymore. She was standing in the center of its undoing. Sierra whispered, "He can't come back from this." Cadden nodded, eyes wide. "He's finished." Finally, Kessler muttered, his voice cracking, I was just trying to do my job." Marcia shook her head slowly. "You were trying to do more than your job. You were trying to assert yourself at the expense of children. That is the difference." The crowd erupted in low claps, hesitant at first, but growing louder until it became undeniable. Phones captured the applause, the murmurs, the exchanged looks between strangers who knew they were witnessing something far bigger than mall drama. Kessler's shoulders slumped. The smirk was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who realized he was losing not just control of the situation, but the narrative of who he was in that moment. Marcia leaned closer, her voice low enough for him, but still audible to those nearby. "Accountability isn't optional. You will answer for today." Imani exhaled, feeling the sting of humiliation finally begin to lift. Her mom wasn't just defending her. She was showing her that truth, when spoken firmly, could shatter arrogance. But the scene wasn't over. Mall security radios crackled in the distance. More officers began to approach. The confrontation had drawn enough attention that higher-ups were stepping in. The buzz of radios cut through the air before the second wave of security even appeared. Heads turned as two more officers in Navy Mall uniforms pushed through the crowd, their heavy boots echoing against the tile. They scanned from Kessler to Marcia, then to the growing circle of people holding up phones like courtroom spectators waiting for a verdict. Asterisk. The two additional officers stopped a few feet away, taking in the scene. Their presence only magnified the tension. The crowd pressed closer, phones raised, the red recording lights flashing like courtroom cameras capturing every detail. Kessler's shoulders sagged further. Every attempt to reclaim authority had crumbled. His voice, once booming and commanding, was now a brittle whisper. I was just enforcing the rules." Marcia's gaze never wavered. Calm, precise, unstoppable. Enforcing rules does not give you the right to humiliate, threaten, or mock. You are entrusted with authority. Yes, but authority comes with responsibility. And today, you failed spectacularly. Kessler looked from Marcia to the crowd, from Imani to the phones documenting every word. The realization hit him like ice. The story was no longer his to control. The narrative of arrogance, mockery, and abuse had been flipped, and everyone could see it. Imani felt her chest lift with a mix of relief and pride. The sting of ridicule from minutes ago had dissolved, replaced by a powerful clarity. She wasn't just defended. She was seen, believed, and vindicated. Sierra whispered, gripping her arm, "It's over. He's done." Cadden nodded silently, eyes wide. Kessler's final words barely carried over the murmurs of the crowd. I apologize," he said, hollowly, almost to himself. Marcia's eyes pierced him like a gavel coming down. An apology without accountability is meaningless. you will reflect on today, and you will answer for it. And I expect that lesson to extend beyond this mall, because your authority is only as valid as the respect and fairness with which you exercise it. The crowd, once tense and divided, now collectively exhaled. Some clapped softly, others whispered. In awe, all of them witnessing a moment that transcended a simple mall confrontation. Phones lowered slowly as the reality sank in. Arrogance and abuse of power had met unwavering truth and consequence. Kessler slumped completely now. His smirk gone, replaced by the hollow resignation of a man stripped of control. The officers beside him exchanged uneasy glances. Sensing the gravity of what had just unfolded, Marcia reached Imani, placing a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. You stood tall, even when it was hard. Never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Today was a lesson not just for him, but for everyone watching. Imani exhaled deeply, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in what felt like hours. Around them, the crowd began to disperse. The buzz of whispers replaced by quiet conversations. Phones still capturing the story that would be retold again and again. In that moment, the ordinary Saturday at the mall had transformed into something unforgettably story of arrogance confronted, of authority held accountable, and of a 14-year-old girl whose courage refused to be undermined. And as they walked away, Imani, Sierra, and Kadan knew something profound. Sometimes the smallest acts of truth and bravery could turn humiliation into triumph. And even the most ordinary places could witness extraordinary justice.